I welcome all people who have come with concerns about the historical marker. Appreciate your coming. And let me just start off, for anyone who does not know, last week I made a decision that caused an additional delay for the long delayed placement of the historical marker. Okay. I got word that one of the people who had opposed the placement of the marker wanted to meet with me. This is the tenant at the site of where the Uptown Club used to be. And also wanted me to, first time that the owner could be there was last Friday. And as it happened, the plan was with Tom Sappington and others to go ahead. The post had already been placed there for several days. This was on, at that time, was on Calvert Street. And the plan was to put the marker on that post Friday morning. And I contacted the people charged with that, asked them to wait till after my meeting with the tenant and the owner. And we can question whether or not it was the right decision or not. It caused 1 workday's delay of the placement of the sign. And this has actually been my policy the whole time that I've been mayor and on council, is that with any projects where there is opposition, no matter whom, no matter whether they vote, no matter race, color, creed, what have you, political party, if they wanted to meet with me, I was quite willing to meet with them. It's an open door policy. Some of you may recall that with regard to what's now called the Aunt Sarah's Playground over at Wilmer Park. And it's been broad support for that playground. But there were a few pockets of opposition. And I reached out and met with the people. We didn't change a thing. But I did allow them to have full opportunity to be heard. We did that. And that's what I was seeking to do with this. We met, again with the owner, with the tenant, and probably was not much changed ultimately. To their credit, they're not the first people to be confused about their town boundaries. Most renters don't understand quite where their land boundaries are, and quite a number of owners don't really know. I think I have some shrubs that extend out into it. I mow the lawn that actually belongs to us. It's simply built that, but I mow that lawn. Okay? But I have to accept it when Talkie or somebody else wants to come through. I would have to accept it if the town wanted to put a speed limit sign there. And in this case, ultimately, both the owner and the tenant would have to do that. But they're not the first people to be confused by that. Interestingly, in the course of that discussion, initially they were saying, well, nobody knows Charlie Graves. And then others in the same group on the same corner kind of said, well, if nobody knows, maybe it's high time they did. And they actually spoke up in favor of putting the sign. And ultimately, both the owner and the tenant suggested moving it, the post from where it was on Calvert Street, around to College Avenue, which I agreed to because I was not aware of anybody who had objected to that, and I'd heard that Monica Graves had actually wanted it on College Avenue. The one area where there was disagreement was that the owner and tenant both wanted the sign down on kind of a podium on the ground. It would not have been nearly as visible. Some people thought that it would have been disrespectful if it was there. And I said I would consider it. Okay? But I actually went home feeling fairly successful. We had had a very civil conversation in contrast to several others, which was more shouting back and forth across the fence. And a little bit of backdrop on this. We were not aware of opposition to this until very late in the game. Bill, I think you talked with one of the co-owners, and they did not voice opposition. It was pretty late in the game that we realized that somebody was opposed. And some people felt, oh, well, you know, it doesn't matter if they oppose it. And ultimately, you know, majority does rule. But I felt it was important to listen to the people. After meeting, I came home, wrote a note to all of the council people, giving them an update on what I had discussed, what I was recommending. And right after having sent that, I walked down the street right out here, met with JMQueen, Karen Somerville, ultimately Reverend Brown, and others. And they persuaded me that putting it down on the ground was just not what the community wanted. They too saw it as disgraceful. After that meeting, I did not make a commitment one way or another. I heard from both sides. You bear in mind that under our structure, our town council meets 2 days a month. We're also forbidden to gather in off hours any more than 2 of us at a time. So it was not feasible to reconvene this meeting. So a little bit I was on my own. Went back, sought to get back with the renter and homeowner and tell them that no, we had considered it, but it just wasn't going to be viable. Individuals had turned off their phone. I knocked on the door, there was nobody there. I sent text messages, email messages, no answer. I then called JMQueen, and we subsequently talked on Sunday, and I told him that I concluded that we would put the sign, and I think many of you may have seen that sign by now. I subsequently got a picture of that. There was a slight rain delay this morning, but it was installed early this afternoon on Calvert Street. We're very pleased to have it there. College Avenue. So that's what happened. Why it happened, I hope you understand. If you think I was purposely delaying a project that had broad community support, I'm sorry you believe that. That clearly was not my intent, but it was my policy to try to give anyone who wanted to be heard, even if they were an opponent, to be heard on. And that I followed through, and I caused a 1 workday delay by that. I know that this is part of a larger project. It's one very successful, and I think without incident, placement of a sign down near the marina. This one had delays, and we're so sorry it had delays. The other locations, I think one at James Church, various other places. Only thing I will ask is if there's any opposition. It doesn't stop a project. It doesn't mean change a project. But to let us know early on. My biggest regret on this is not that I met with the tenant and owner. It's that I didn't meet with them earlier. And I apologize for creating that delay. There have been delays on lots of other well worthwhile activities. There were delays. Jim Bogdan can tell you, as we went back, not just one individual, but people who felt they were left out of the loop with regard to the playground. And we went back again and again to make sure they were in. KRM will tell you there have been delays on the road paving at the YMCA. It's not because we're opposed to the YMCA. I don't know anybody's fault. The oil price is coming steadily down. Asphalt price is tied directly to oil price. Each month, we're reducing the cost of that contract by another 5 or 10%. I think that was a wise decision. But there are delays. And God knows, everybody here knows that there have been delays on the recycling. It happens. We try to minimize it, but it happens. So, I would welcome anybody who wants to speak to this issue, share their ideas, their opinions, and on the way forward, we welcome you. Thank you.
Hold on, I just like
I got a podium over.
to the left.
Yeah, please. That,
Quick question before I start. Is there any way we can pull up the Chestertown Unites Against Racism plan on this screen?
I don't know, but I've got a pamphlet here with it.
We'll use you then since you got the pamphlet.
I will hold them up, absolutely.
So, first, let me just say, today I'm here in the role of JMQueen, co-author and chairman of the Equity Advisory Committee. And I think what a lot of the community needs to hear today is whether or not our elected officials are being held accountable. For the JMQueen and the council, we've talked about this over the last 3 months, so we're going to hear a lot of the information that we've already discussed, but it's only right, as you took time to give a debrief on your perspective.
Absolutely.
We give everyone here from our community, I'm not saying
You are welcome.
to give this. So, first thing I wanted to do is talk about the Chestertown Unites Against Racism 16-month comprehensive plan. My first question would be to the council and say to each one of you, what does Chestertown Unites mean to you all? And I would like to start with the incumbents who were here that unanimously voted on the plan, and then to the newer council members, because it's not really fair to hold them as hard as the council may get held tonight because they're new to the process. So ladies first, Megan.
Sure. So I think, and we talked about this in other areas with the town, so we're all elected for 4 years, and then it shifts 2 years. So Tom and I came on about 2 years ago, and Tim and Jose came on about a year ago. So it shifts along. When we come in, there are strategic plans and things like that that are put into place for the town, but there wasn't anything relating to racism or the issues that have really come present in the last couple of years. So this was our opportunity to come up with a plan that was strategic and that we were all working towards together, versus people working on different projects that maybe don't have any cohesive structure to them, or that don't make a meaningful end. So that was it. We each selected members for the committee. We came up where there's a 3-stage, there's 4 tiers to each plan, and that was what we're doing to move forward. So to me, it was a way for us to come up with a strategy to try to address this in a small town and make a difference.
One closing question to the next councilman. Do you think the Chestertown Unites Against Racism plan was successful?
I think we are moving towards success. I don't think that we're finished with the plan. You know, as we're talking about today with police reform and things like that, a lot of this is still ongoing and it needs to be discussed on a regular basis.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Tom.
So from my perspective, coming in kind of cold as a council person, especially having moved downtown for the majority of my time here in Chestertown, I had a blind spot, right? I had a blind spot as a resident, I had a blind spot as a newly elected council person, and I really wanted to help. Then we get into the era of the murder of George Floyd, and we have very impactful, to me anyway, conversations about race and racism in our community. But from my perspective, it was here and then there, and then it was a bunch of issues kind of coming together all at once. And the plan, I think, brought some order to that, right? It was strategic in nature, but tactical in implementation. And so for me, the question was, in this, and I'm going to borrow your phrase, Reverend Brown, in this season of change, how do we act in a way, right, that moves this ball forward and welcomes our Black residents to the town, re-engages them in the political process, and re-engages them in economic power, political power. So for me, the plan gave me those tactical steps on which I could rely, right? One of the most impactful parts was the Equity Advisory Committee, and I see a few members here. And as you know, John, I was interested in having that Equity Advisory Committee continue on. Because I think that when we have these conversations, and especially when we have conversations like tonight, where we're trying to balance the interests of a property owner and their tenants who pay property taxes and maybe don't want the sign flat out, don't understand what the sign is about, don't understand what the issue is, whatever the underlying causes are, but also there is a community need, right? We need a way to have these conversations that benefits the council and helps us understand the issues. Because I know from my perspective, and I think there are a lot of people in this room who know me, I'm a computer guy, I'm a software developer, so things are logical for me. And I look for Booleans, I look for true-false statements, and I try and navigate that way. But these issues aren't that, right? These issues are harder, and they contain emotion and passion and fire. And I think that it's hard for council people, especially new council people, to fully engage with that. When you're trying to balance, what you see in the charter or in our ordinances, for instance, or what you think might be best for the community, but then also balance that with what is best for all of our residents that you may not see, that might be blind to you. So back to the plan. It gave me those steps that I could work through with you, and we've had lots of good conversations, back and forth. Really, like we got mad at each other a few times, right?
I gotta remain neutral, because I'm my equity advisor, I gotta remain neutral.
But it's good, right? Because we're having those conversations, and that empowers me as a leader in the community to understand what I'm doing right and what I'm maybe doing wrong, and where I'm ahead of my skis and where I'm not.
Understood. Would you say, was the plan successful in your eyes? Yes or no? You can give context to that, but was Chestertown Unites Against Racism successful?
I think it's an uncompleted work, but yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Foster?
I do think it's a work in progress. Chestertown has a variety of strategic plans. Unfortunate thing about them is often people work very hard, they get a lot of ideas, and it sits on the bookshelf. And that's a danger to anyone. But as I look through this, I'm frankly rather pleased with the number of boxes that we can tick on. Okay. Talk about Juneteenth, about Legacy Day, about a lynching remembrance project, diversity and cultural training, some of the things we've just spoken about in police reform, the ward redistricting, make it accountable, zoning, taxation policy. That one actually is one I've really been working on for long before, in terms of the stopping double taxation, which hits renters as well as homeowners, which is one of the most regressive financial policies around. I think it is a work in progress. I think we need to bring it out more often. I think we need to make all of us accountable. But I think there's some excellent ideas in here, and my compliments, really kudos to you and Chris Serino. I didn't like these, but I think they're very good. And so, yes, I think it is a successful but unfinished effort.
Thank you, Mayor. Since you got it out and we can't pull it up, I would like for you to go to the 16-month comprehensive plan and read the vision statement aloud, please, for the people in the audience.
And this is right here.
The vision statement, yes, sir.
Okay. The town of Chestertown aspires to become a welcoming community where people of different races, ethnic groups, and backgrounds interact, form friendships, and fully participate in the community's social, educational, economic, political, and cultural life. The town believes that acknowledging the racial inequities of our past and present and recognizing the contributions of all citizens will help build a more equitable community where all are respected and empowered to participate. The town commits to working with a broad cross-section of stakeholders to develop equal educational and economic opportunities so that all citizens can enjoy a more just, productive, and healthy community.
Yeah, so with that, me being the co-author, I wrote that to hold the town accountable, not individual councilmen to have their own perspective of what they think might work. this plan that we're gonna talk about in detail before we get the community leaders will show how I put the accountability on them and give us, the community, the power back to speak for our community. Thank you for reading that. The phrase I want to point to in the vision statement that has to do with tonight is recognizing the contributions of all citizens. That's what that historical signage is about. To build a more equitable community. So when we talk, you all think it's about the installation of the sign in the ground and the timing of it. This is a bigger issue that speaks to the black community here in Chestertown, and that's why we're going to dive into this plan a little bit deeper. Now, I will say this. Everyone has had the ample time on this council to go through the plan. They approved it unanimously. You don't approve something that you don't know nothing about or that you're not researching constantly. So when they say they wanted to continue, they dictate when it stops. We're an advisory committee. Can you read the program overview, just the 3 rules, please? And the reason for this is because the pillars all have to tie into these 3 steps of the overview. It makes the plan if it can talk to the overview and the goals of the plan.
Program overview. Chestertown Unites Against Racism is a comprehensive 16-month program designed.
Not that part. The overview should be 1, 2, 3. The first one should be educate the community.
There you go.
Oh, all right.
That's the preface.
Yeah, I wrote the notes.
Yep. Number 1, educate the community about its history pertaining to race relations. Number 2, pursue legislative reforms that address systemic racism in the town of Chestertown. Number 3, promote unity, equality, and inclusivity amongst all residents.
Thank you, Mayor. So the 3 pillars, if you can hold that one up. The 3 pillars are education, legislative, and unification. The reason we have these 3 different pillars is under each pillar, as the mayor read earlier, there are activities, programming, and things to make things move forward. The plan Chestertown Unites Against Racism came in 2020, and the goal was to help the black community feel empowered, but the community as a whole to move forward. We're talking about forward progress today. We're not talking about delays. We're not talking about things didn't happen on time. We're talking about forward progress today. With those pillars, if you look in the legislation pillar, one of those pillars is the Equity Advisory Committee. But before we get to the Equity Advisory Committee, we get to a resolution. That resolution is 052020, which they all voted for unanimously to make Chestertown Unites Against Racism a plan that has accountability by using legislation. Are we all on the same page with that? So they have accountability when they form the Equity Advisory Committee to govern the plan. So when the plan is supposed to be governed, you must present your idea to the Equity Advisory Committee, the 10 community leaders that these council members all handpicked, then discuss the issues, and then bring it to the town and advise the town on the next steps. Everyone clear on that? Because we can't talk about the sign without everyone clear on why the plan is in place. So, with that, the second pillar, after the resolution and giving the Equity Advisory Committee the legislative power to handle some of these issues that are going on with race, the next step is education, which is one of those pillars. The education pillar, historical signage, is one of those pillars. But also in those pillars of education, community dialogue is there. We're going to have that today. The reason I'm going out of my character and really checking into my job mode is to show the town where they're going wrong. Because they have a belief that they're doing the right thing, which I'm not doubting. I'm not doubting that. But I think the perception and understanding from the black community needs to be thoroughly explained to you all so you can understand how to help us. The last pillar is unification. We can touch on that as we talk, but I just put that up to say that sign was supposed to go up in Juneteenth. So when you get educated on something, when something has laws backing it, like resolutions, ordinances, and laws and policies, we all as a community to be able to celebrate it. So when the sign was not in the ground on Juneteenth, the community had an issue because the community is following the plan. All right, so that's enough about Chestertown Unites Against Racism. What's gonna happen is I'll have some speakers come up. The speakers are gonna ask some questions. Once again, we all went through these questions a million times, but they have the questions they're gonna ask because they're here tonight. And during the questions, when they ask questions, answer to the best of your ability. And if I need to step in for clarification, I will, because I'm actually representing the team right now, but at the same hat, I have to kind of let them do their thing. So the first speaker I would like to introduce is Monica Graves. And Monica, you can just start with telling them who you are, why you're here, and then before you get to the process of everything, just give them a little history about who your father was and what the Graves family means to Chestertown Run.
Okay. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I am Monica Graves Bentley. I am daughter of Charles Graves, who was the proprietor and owner of the Uptown Club. The club was an establishment of multicultural center that was prevalent in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. It was an entertainment hub and a work environment for the Uptown community and for the African Americans that were in here in Kent County. It provided entertainment, it provided jobs, it provided social acceptance for all the communities in Chestertown and surrounding Chestertown. So when I was approached earlier this year, the committees wanted to do the historical science, I was very excited because my father's legacy is very important to me and also to other members in the community in whole in Chestertown. And that was evident when we had our first Legacy Day. First Legacy Day was in reference and honoring my father and the club. And that Legacy Day was one of the most attended that they've had so far. So I know that, he was instrumental in bringing all people together in the community, not just African Americans, but everybody that lives here in Kent County. So I guess I understood it back in February when they initially wanted to put the sign up. They couldn't do it because of COVID. So then I was contacted later saying that it was going to be on Juneteenth. Well, we did our photo ops, we did all of that on Juneteenth. Then a month later, I contacted Mr. Ingersoll to say, okay, when is it going up? It's not up yet. And I was told that there was some opposition from the community, one particular tenant at the time. So I agreed to get involved, to meet with the tenant and the family, and to my dismay, I was not able to meet with the actual owner. Only the tenant was there. So, and going back and forth between that communication, unfortunately, we never came to heads. So I went back to the girl and said, okay, well, this is what I propose that we do. Which I, at that time, indicated to him where I thought the sign could be placed amicably for both parties not to have any issues with it being placed there. So we agreed on the placement. And so I think at the August 15th meeting again, it was voted on to go in and install the sign. So I guess 3 weeks now, a month now, the sign was still not up. So this has been a very frustrating process. I just came out of corporate America, and I am a big component of action review. So this, I understand what you did, Mayor, to try to be amicable to make sure everybody was heard. But I think there needs to be a process put in place so that this does not happen again with this project of any type or any other future projects that have anything to do with the African American community, because it's not going to be a positive outcome for anybody that's involved in the community. So those are my thoughts, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done to try to make this happen and to make it happen, but it was just a little, it was not cohesive and wasn't done in the manner that it could have been done in. So thank you.
Ms. Graves, can I ask you a few questions while you're at the podium, please, to address to the council?
Sure.
When you were asked where did you want the installation to be, what was your preference? Was it Calvert Street or was it College Avenue?
College Avenue, the actual address for the club was 114, 116 College Avenue.
Okay. In the council meeting August 15th of 2020, Bill Ingersoll said he would make the decision, the final decision based on what Monica Graves told him. She obviously just said on record she wanted where it now is on College Avenue, but the town placed it on Calvert Heights. A thing I was telling you all in the last couple of meetings is about perception. So if you tell us that you're gonna listen to this family we're honoring, and then this family says put it on College Avenue, and then you place it on Calvert Street, we have a reason to be kind of weary about the trust here. One other question, your interactions with Bill, were they delightful?
Well, I've known Bill a long time.
Yes.
Yes, so I can't say that I did not have any, I don't have any negative thing to say about our interactions, but it was just that it was delayed, and then it wasn't, after he told me that it was gonna be put there in August, I was just a little leery as to when it was gonna be done.
Yes.
Yes.
And the reason I say that because I said on public records, I said on public records several times that Bill Ingersoll took every step to make sure the sign went in. The first time he moved the stop sign without no one even telling him or bringing up safety issues, that was his awareness. He moved that to worry about safety. So he done his job with that. I think the complaint from the tenants in the home was they were not contacted. Well, within the last 4 months, I know Bill has contacted them multiple times. So they were connected and contacted, and they did know what was going on. Also, with the installation, Bill said on record that he doesn't think that sign will impale anyone or hurt anyone. This is the town manager saying, essentially, he's in support of the sign, and he wants the sign in. Thank you, Ms. Graves.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Karen Somerville. Hopefully, Ms. Somerville. Reverend Brown. Excuse me. Reverend Brown. So, do you want to talk? All right. I will say this, Ms. Karen Somerville, come on up. Show of hands of the EAC members who served on the Equity Advisory Board are here. Vic Sensenay from Washington College, Reverend Brown from Bethel AME Church, located in that district, and Tom Heyman, which is, I want to say, serving chair of the Tea Party. Is that correct? Yeah. Of the Tea Party. All of these people served on the Equity Advisory Committee. And just a yes or no, are you all in support of the Chestertown Unites Against Racism plan? And are you in support of historical signages going in with least amount of resistance?
Yes.
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 Ms. Somerville?
Good evening, Council, Foster, and I want to personally say I thank you so much for moving forward with the installation of the historic signs, not allowing it to be delayed any further. I want to say that I viewed footage of past council meetings in these past months while this issue was going on, and where the subject of the installation for the Uptown Club signage was in question. And not only that did the council seem to have been sort of flailing about a couple of questions that I want to make sure that I address for you, because I feel like I'm probably the person who's in the best position to answer those questions. One of those questions was, did the town pay for the signs? And where there was someone in the room who I believe had firsthand knowledge to answer that question, had it not been for John speaking up to the fact that it appeared that the town would have continued to presume that they were paying for them. It's still misguided information, if at least a lack of knowledge or understanding. The second question was, how many of these signs are expected to be installed? So let me say this. I want to keep up with my notes so that I make sure that I follow things in order. I want to start by giving you a genesis of the project. I think that you already know that John has made it plain that this, I wrote a proposal when Chris Arena was still the mayor, and the proposal was to establish historic signage for local African American history. I wrote that proposal under the pillars of education that was established by the Equity Advisory Committee. At the time, I can say that at this time, the town of Chestertown has not paid for any sign at all. All of the funding for those signs have come from private donors and in collaboration with the Curation Fellowship that I received from Washington College through the Chesapeake Heartlands Project. When this initiative was passed by the council in 2020, in response to that proposal, It was stipulated that the signs would be installed on private property when applicable, and then getting the permission of the property owners. That they would also be installed on property that is owned by the town. And when Chris was here, he was good enough to come out actually with us, with Cindy Fulton and myself, for the first time. And we proposed a couple of sites, and he walked the grounds with us to make sure that we were selecting areas that were owned by the town. We were also informed that in any event that any of these properties turned out to be properties that were under the jurisdiction of the county, that we would have to go another route. So we have been fully informed, and we have made it a point to dot our proverbial I's and cross our T's. Okay, so we had believed that we were forming an amicable relationship with the town, and followed through by placing an order of the signage with the company suggested by the town manager. And that way we would be able to maintain quality and a uniform design in the signs. So after each one of the project managers had paid for the signage in full prior to the town ever placing the order, and that was always done on behalf of this project by a number of persons that were a part of my partners in this. As for how many signs will be installed, well, so far we had the sign down at the waterfront. We have now the Uptown Club sign. The next two signs are going to be installed at Garnet Elementary School. There's two. There's one that's going to be inside and another that's going to be outside on the ground. That is under the jurisdiction of the Board of Education. All of that has been fully passed unanimously by the Board of Education, and the signs have been ordered, and it is not anything that the town needs to be involved in, except to be supportive in terms of perhaps showing up for the unveiling. And with that, I stress that because we were very disappointed that no one was present when we unveiled the Uptown Club signage. And I have to stress that that's something that has been felt deeply. Okay, so in addition, I was granted a second fellowship by the Chestertown Partners Project, and those two signs will be for Bethel. We'll go at Bethel AME Church and James United Church. Now, I've spoken with James, and they've shown me where their area of their property is, but I still see that part is has brick that is a part of the town sidewalks. So we will be constantly in touch with the town to make sure that things are going in the right place with that. Let's see, and again, that funding comes from the Chestertown Partners Project, as with the funding for the Barnett School comes from a combination of private donors and again the fellowship. So one thing that I want to point out in closing is that these signs provide support to the tourism in this town and in this county. You know, through the Heartland's website and the proposed QR codes that will be attached to the signage, visitors and everyday citizens alike in the town of Chestertown will have the benefit of the resources at their literally at their fingertips. Not only that, this history is accessible to the classroom, because through that fellowship I have developed documentaries about the Uptown Club, as many as I think seven. She knows more about my work than I do. 7 documentaries that feature the life of Charlie Grace and the Uptown Club, and there's also one on the life of Emma Miller. People will be able to walk right up to these signs and simply hold their phones up to them and it will unfold, or they should go on the website. This is all about unification and education. So I just want to say it's really important for us to continue to work together, and when I come in to the town office, I want to be greeted and met with the same respect that I level out. That's what I want, that's what I expect, and I should expect to get nothing less than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Somerville, a few questions. During your filming of the documentary, was there any opposition to the Charlie Graves documentaries, or did you hear any opposition for the historical signage within the last year of you doing your work?
Oh, absolutely none. And in fact, I spent a longer amount of time in the area than I had really been prepared to, just because of so many questions that I was receiving from residents and onlookers who were wondering what I was doing, who were telling me how they had heard about Mr. Graves, how interested they were in what I was doing. I received no opposition whatsoever.
One more question. The process that when you went through with Cindy and Mayor Sereno, of course, because I was keeping records of it, I was there. Is it true to the fact that the process, the only two rules of the historical signage process is one, if it's on private property, you, your supporters, and people that follow your initiative talk to the private owners and get the okay.
And get the okay from
But
that.
if it is on town property, we only need to talk to the town
Yeah,
and our elected officials. Was that correct?
that's correct.
So when Ms. Graves has concerns about this not moving forward, me and Karen already built this in the process. So we only have to follow two rules. And no one on the council has followed these two rules. So when you hear council members say on their own, I wanted to do this to make me feel good about this, or I tried these things other places, it has nothing to do with the legislative power that the plan got, and it has nothing to do with the process that the town told me and Karen to follow. Have we been following this protocol since we started?
Dotted I's and crossed T's.
Thank you, Ms. Somerville.
Thank you. Thank you,
Can
Council.
I ask Karen a question?
Yes, sir.
And Cindy too. Don't you recall that I went down to Frican Street with the three of you and discussed the exact location of the slavery sign? And also what we could do underneath it to make it more permanent in the way of brickwork? Because you keep talking about Chris Sereno, but they delegated that to me, and I met with you guys.
Are you discussing the first sign is correct?
Slavery sign, yeah.
Yes, so the elected officials delegate to the town manager to make sure that they.
I'm just asking if I.
Yes, you have. Now, let me clear this.
Let me
Go ahead.
answer. Yeah, you have gone out with.
Because you all showed a lot of appreciation for the ideas I had. I said,
Yeah, you did.
okay.
We did a lot of emails back and forth and all that. That's why I said I thought that we had established an amicable relationship.
And I agree.
I agree with.
I agree, and I think the second process should have gone equally as well. And I'm sorry it didn't, because it wasn't because the town had any objections to it. Every time, and I was up there several times, I think once with you and John initially in February.
Yeah, we were all up there at the same time.
Yeah. So, and I want to thank the first ward council person for, when I brought this to the council, I said, we have to vote on this. We have to say, that in the case of College Avenue, this has to be done. That's all. Thank you.
No, correct. Bill, you've done your due diligence. Whether me and you have a heated email or exchange in council meeting, you have done your due diligence.
You know what, I enjoy it, and we've done enough that we know how to put a plaque in, and I hope I can help on the next 3 plaques, whether there's brick sidewalk or marble or what. We're good at that, and we want to help. This one incident was an outlier because I've never seen such. I wish I
Correct. But we're trying to
find the word for the acidic way that we were treated every time we went there.
Correct. And the reason we're using a town plan, because it's already context to keep these minor things from happening, which wasn't followed. I have one last question for Bill Ingersoll, and it's not to put you on the spot. If you notice the historical signage down at the marina, it was a line, the last line, 3 words that were added were, "We honor them." Those words came from town manager Bill Ingersoll because he said the town can put one more support tag on there. In this process, do you feel like the town has been honoring that community? Being the process, not totality, what we're going through now with the second one. Do you feel like we're beyond?
I also helped edit the one for Charlie Graves. I think I helped in the wording of it. I wanted to.
You have a city council, we
I
will
wanted
learn
to
this
do what I
together.
could help, how I
Yes.
could help. And I think this is truly unfortunate that anyone would think that we weren't ready to help in any way.
All right.
John, if I can.
I've been working in the community for
Yes, sir.
47
One
years.
point.
Some of my first jobs were to get rid of the slums in the neighborhood across from the Uptown Club, Hubbard's Row, Spikers Row on the next block. Terrible housing conditions that don't exist anymore. I have a lot of respect for the community. I thought I had a few friends up there too.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Throughout all of this, Chestertown Unites. And I guess what I was struck with is what a horrible, horrible charity it would have been if in the spirit of Chestertown Unites, we stick a sign in there and people are immediately vandalizing it. What kind of symbol of Chestertown Unites would that have been? I was doing everything I could think of. How do we avoid that horrible symbol? Again, I'm sorry it delayed, Monica. Karen, I'm sorry it delayed. I appreciate your frustration. Think how frustrating, how terrible it would have been for all of us. Here we're doing this. I recognize some of this is symbols, and the whole part. The real purpose is not the symbol, it's the unity. And if in the midst of all of our efforts at unity, this broke out in terms of people vandalizing the very monuments and markers that he was trying to bring. I was trying to avoid that.
I understand.
Did I have a minor success? I think so. Was it worth the effort? I think so. But I caused a delay, and I'm sorry.
Question, Mayor Foster. You said it was a delay of 1 to 2 days. When did you speak to the tenants of that residence that
Friday afternoon.
this past Friday that passed? Did you make any attempt to speak with these tenants that opposed it after June 14th when we all were first made aware of issues? Did you make any attempt to speak with them prior to Friday?
I did not. Okay? I didn't learn until much later that no one had talked face to face with an owner. I think I was the first one when she came from Delaware here on Friday and met. Bill had a phone conversation with another owner who had actually indicated that, hey, he was fine with it. His wife wasn't. You ever seen a situation like that? One family likes it and the other one didn't? We were not aware of that opposition.
Correct.
Should I have gotten in retrospect? Hey, 2020 hindsight. Got dug into it earlier. John, I also, you defined your lane, that's fine.
What do you mean by that?
You defined your lane as saying it's not my job to talk with the tenant. That's okay.
Correct, because it's on town property,
That's fine.
which I'll touch on.
No, that's fine. But you
fine.
defined your lane. I was not aware that the lanes were that finely divided. I'm more accustomed to a ball game where one person misses, somebody else tries to help out. But okay,
Yeah.
my fault for not understanding the lanes were that. But at any rate, I didn't dive into it until later, and I will always regret that I didn't get into it earlier.
So on public record, we have an acting mayor say he's not knowledgeable of a town plan that he voted unanimously for. He hasn't made the step to speak to all of the citizens until it was already issues and they had already manifested. So these are the things where we have to stick to the Chestertown Unites plan because it was a whole advisory committee that were telling you to do all these steps for the last 16 months. And the minute Chris Serene, and I hate to keep bringing that part up, but the minute he resigned, all the support went away. Equity Advisory Committee, not to put y'all on the spot, but would y'all agree when Chris stepped away, the support stepped away? I hate to put you on the spot, Vic.
I mean, Mayor Sereno was a big champion of the plan and one of the co-writers of it, so I think that was inevitable in some ways.
Reverend Brown, the support was there. Tom Amy,
Maybe the support.
the support was still coming from the town? It still continued after he resigned?
No, I thought you were asking me about
When Chris Sereno was there.
Sereno, when he was there.
When he
I said
resigned,
was there.
yes, when he resigned, did you feel the support was there?
Not as strong.
Tom Heyman?
I agree, not as much as when Chris was there.
And
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
here?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We're taking nothing away from the Equity Advisory Committee, but there's some things that are in this plan that were not solely Equity Advisory Committee. The Lynching Remembrance Project that many of us were involved with, Legacy Day that many of us were involved. You're doing a great job.
No, it's not about me, it's about the black community and having you understand. You just gotta hear this out. When that plan the Equity Advisory Committee was in charge of policing all of those things. James Teller lynching was doing the work. That's why I wrote him in the plan. Me and Chris wrote the plan, we picked who were doing the work.
I'm saying,
So when we
don't
picked
say
the
the support wasn't there, the community.
No.
Hear
The
me.
support for Chestertown Unites Against Racism has just said that they feel like the support kind of moved around when Chris Sereno resigned. This is people who served on the committee you all appointed. So you're hearing from us.
Okay.
One of the closings we never got a chance to do was a closing presentation of Chestertown Unites Against Racism. We didn't do it because they supposed to tell us any committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, the Utility Committee, any committee has a protocol that they follow to start and or end that. We were never given that privilege. And the advisory, our last couple of meetings, we were all kind of in and out on saying we're reluctant to step away because we knew the plans would not be supported. Yes, Tom.
Not to interrupt you here, and we've talked about this on the record before, but I came to an EAC meeting and asked you all to continue. And that I would work with you all to make it a standing commission in the town.
Let's say I agree with you, Tom, but it's not for JMQueen to agree.
I get
What
that.
steps did you take to ensure the continuation of it after the 16 months?
You all voted to disband yourself.
We didn't disband the plan ran out. We were waiting for leadership from you all.
I came to the second from the last
And what
meeting.
did you do after that meeting to tell us, okay, it's continuing, okay, it's stopping? You said you did it. What did you do?
I came to the meeting.
Yes, correct.
I asked
You
you.
been to several meetings.
Yep. I asked that you all continue on. The very next meeting, you all voted to disband yourselves. What can I do?
It's in the minutes, John.
We did not vote to disband. The plan ran out after January 1st. Yes, it did.
I believe in November. Did you have meetings after November?
In order for us to disband, we have to take a vote, and then the advisory committee has to present it to the town.
Did you have any meetings after November?
It was over. The 16-month plan ran out in 16 months. There was a closing date. In order for it to move forward, you all as leaders that are a governing body over the advisory committee were supposed to tell us the next steps.
Yeah, but John-
That's why it's confusion. You all don't know anything about the plan you voted for, and we think that is a moment of weakness where you all are perceived to not want to put the signs in it.
I get that, John, but not to throw you on the spot, Brian, but Kent Forward or Main Street or
Has nothing to do with the black community, and that's what we are
understand,
talking about
but
today.
the general modus operandi is that these organizations will come to us and say, here are our ideas for the next steps, or here's our plan.
Are they governed by the town mayor and council to follow those rules? When they come in here as organizations, as Ken Ford or any other organization, aren't they coming on their own will?
Of course they are, but there are other commissions as well, right? The Arts Commission, the Environmental Committee.
And what is the process to end those if you choose to end it? We would like to know, because the Chestertown Equity Advisory Committee doesn't know
John,
about
those groups come to us and talk about being they apply to be on the minutes, on the agenda. This is routine. That does not require an act of Congress or an act of the council for you to come and ask, hey, let me ask you right now, John, I would like you to come to a meeting and tell us kind of lessons learned, what you feel you accomplished, what you feel are next is left undone. I think that would be a valuable.
We're working on it now. What we think in the black community, if you all are constantly making efforts to stop progress in our community, you're asking a question, I'm telling you what the community is saying, and what the advisory county, advisory equity committee thinks to a degree. I'm telling you, once again, I'm sitting here telling you what everyone is saying, but you all are taking your individual moments and not being a governing body and governed by the rules you set. These are laws and resolutions that you all set.
Fair enough, fair enough. But we're a group of white people sitting up here, and time again, I have heard from you, John, and I know this isn't about you, but I've heard from other members of the black community. Tom, you need to listen to the black community. You need to follow their guidance. If I sat up here and said, the 16-month plan was great, and now I've got a 10-more-month plan, JMQueen would have sat up here and said, Tom, sit down, we'll work with you on this, or whatever. The point is not that this council doesn't want to do it. It's that we need guidance from the black community to help us formulate those plans. I think you know that I have been very eager to work on issues in the black community.
Can you give an example, please?
Aunt Sarah's Playground.
With that, now, something that has to do with Aunt Sarah's Playground. Who initiative was that, Tom?
That was my initiative.
A white politician talking about what's best for the black community.
But wait a second. No.
That's what it is. What process did he take? Did he bring it to the equity advisory committee? I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking that for the celebration of family. But that was a white family that did it. I mean, a white man that did that for the black community. You done that, and at the same meeting, you talked about not putting a sign in. Stalling and saying we need to go through mediation and all this. Here's another perception. The sign only in because y'all thought it was going to be a crazy rally today. That's why the sign is in. The sign was not in. It was placed in the ground this morning. Who remember how hard it was raining this morning? It was placed in the ground today. Why today? Why today? We want to make sure that when we come to you all, you follow the plan, and we all get to execute the things for our community. That's all we asking. But every time we try to explain where we are and how we feel, you all get defensive and shut down. We're not attacking you all personally. We're trying to hold you accountable for the laws and the procedures and the ordinances and resolutions you have voted for. Is that illegal? Am I wrong for doing that?
Man, it just... Like, I get where you're coming at. Don't take it personally. I really
I
don't.
don't.
Just,
Yeah, you already, yes.
but man, it feels like you're coming at it from both sides, right? And there's no place for us to win here, right? Like, we're trying. We're really trying.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But this sign should not have went this far. That's why we're here. When the last time you see this many African Americans in here wanting to talk about anything? That's why
One
we're here.
sign went in, can we agree that the first sign went in well without problems?
Correct.
All right. Do you have any indication the next two signs are going bad? Have you heard anything? Any problems?
Because you all have been taken out the loop because of what happened. With the first sign, did you all have any input on the first sign? It's not Bill Ingersoll.
I think,
you all.
I'm sorry the delay. Okay. I imposed a 1 workday delay. And
From June 14th to this morning, it's more than 1 day.
I didn't impose that.
So who did? That's the town's job. So who did? You voted for August 15th. And the reason it's in the ground, so I really don't want to go through this because we're still going to leave here thinking you all weren't listening.
I'd like to say the sign is in the ground.
Reluctantly because you did it this morning.
I apologize for the delay in the sign. Come on. Can we move forward?
Good question. Yes, we can. How can we move forward? As Equity Advisory Chairman, I have a few suggestions to advise the town, and you can vote or discuss them. The first one would have been the immediate installation of the signage with no altercations at the location that Monica Graves select. It's in the ground now. We don't have to discuss it anymore. We're moving forward. A commitment to the town, this is advisory, a commitment to the town to fund the next 2 historical signages that fall on town property. It's something for you to discuss, vote on it, whatever you do, it's just advisory. But then also a commitment to Chestertown Unites Against Racism for the next four years. Now, that has to be discussed on what it looks like and what it does as well, but those would be the three things that I would advise the council on as my role as Equity Advisory Chairman and my role as the co-author, and I can email all of these things. But here's the thing, it has to be a constant dialogue. I've talked to Bill so much in the last month, I try to avoid him now. When he got in office, and Tim, I've been going back and forth with them. But the council members who were the incumbents have not been around during the time period after that to even have something you believed in so vividly fight for it. The reason it was so much of an outcry in 2020 about the murals is because people knew you all weren't doing anything, so we had to try to start to get you all to do something. When Wanda Boyer and her team came with the murals, the town was divided almost 50-50. You did not put the murals up, you still put them up. I believe you put them up because you believe it was the best way to move forward. But when you come back and allow one person or one family to stop something, it throws everything we witnessed for 2 years off. Do y'all understand that part? In the black community, the politicians in Chestertown are perceived to not care about our community. Perception. So that's why we write the laws and the plans the way we do, so it takes out the perception and shows the fruit of the labor. If you look at Chestertown Unites Against Racism, you see the fruit of the labor. You didn't talk about, you didn't talk about it, but I still put Aunt Sarah up there because it's something positive for the black community. You all have to do more than talk to the people in your ward to feel comfortable. It's a community out here that's very uncomfortable that needs your support more than when you just want to give it. That's the problem with today. We have to move forward. I advise on the three things. It's not a personal attack on y'all, because I talked to most of you all outside of the council. It's not a personal attack. But the community is saying, enough of you all playing with the black community and how we celebrate our history, culture, and achievements. That's why the plan was written. Because Wanda Boyer, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
When you did the mural, what was your reason for doing the murals?
The reason for doing the mural was to provide knowledge, information, reform, many things that are in the equity committees and the guidelines. And
do you feel they have fulfilled that?
Do I feel the town council has fulfilled it?
Yes.
No, I don't. They have given it an attempt.
Yes.
You know, and as you have stated, that, you ask us what we want, but you give us what you think we want.
Correct.
What you want us to have, yeah.
Correct. And that's the part I'm trying
So
to
we need you to listen
relate.
to the community.
No, I just, as far for Jose and I, who are the newer members, and when we came on, I remember asking, you know, what the equity committee was no longer functioning, and I asked why, and I was told it been disbanded or voted, and I asked why not continue it, and I believe you even told me that the previous members probably wouldn't even want to reestablish it, so
Correct.
I thought that was a shame. I didn't understand past history.
Correct.
I think it's still needed. I think we should have a group like that, and that is basically the mechanism that we are looking at, is that we're looking for that input. I have, and we're at the moment building a strategic plan, which includes this strategic plan and other ones that will be integrated in every single thing we're looking at. This is just the background of everything we look at has to have that component in the back of our mind of how it's going to affect the entire community. We have, and I know you personally and other groups have been shared this strategic planning questionnaire to ask specifically what your group wants.
But I don't have to ask that anymore, Tim, because we solved that in 2020 when we done that.
And this has been incorporated to the strategic
So
plan.
before we buy in as a community into any new strategic plans, we would like to see you implement and follow the one you've done for the black community.
I understand that. And we're working on a plan at the moment that's going to be actionable and accountable exactly as you're saying.
I understand that.
John, would you
Yes, ma'am.
give me a minute to say something else? Well, I think a lot of this has come. A lot of this issue is when the equity committee, when Sereno and I were talking. You know, a lot of information was provided, a lot, and then the equity committee was developed, and it sort of ran right through, you know, and it was passed. And there wasn't a lot of information provided through the council, to the council, because that was Sereno's baby. You all didn't get a lot of information. A lot of stuff wasn't discussed, in my opinion.
I disagree.
It was created. You give me a minute.
Yeah. But I disagree.
I'm talking about a lot of the information wasn't discussed with the town council because that was Sereno's baby. You all elected. You all agreed to it. It passed. Things got started. But was it discussed with you? Because we sit down and discussed for at least a couple of hours on numerous occasions. And it sounds like you all are blind to some of the things that you all agreed to.
I can tell you personally, Wanda, Chris came to my house and we sat down for over an hour and went through the plan. I also met with John on it, because I can tell you on that side of it, we also get the meeting minutes from all the committees and commissions and things like that, and it's part of our responsibility to keep up to date on that. So we are informed on that, at least Tom and I and David.
Yes, and the reason they done that is because of the rule David state. Two of them can't be together. So we've all to have our meetings. And actually, Wanda, how the plan came about is when you all fought for the murals, a lot of us, and this, what you done was great, let's be clear, because I don't know how this is going to come out, but I don't mean it if it come out wrong. But there was no action-based steps.
Those are our actions.
And that came from all of this. So when they're not informed, when you were giving them 3 months of hell, they were being informed by you and other community leaders on what was going on, correct?
Correct.
3 of the 5 were there when you were giving that lesson. The plan was to make everyone move forward in a progressive way and hold everyone accountable. That has been lost. And it can't be pointed to the volunteers to say you all dropped the ball when these are our elected officials and ultimately hold all the power. The fact that the historical signage went in today after a monsoon and not the 3.5 weeks that we've been waiting since June 14th shows you the level of power that they have over our community. Even when we want to celebrate our community, they can say, you celebrated when we let you celebrate it. That's what that plan is taking away. That's why they seem a little defensive and not know how to take these things, because that plan made them accountable. All we have to do is show up and keep holding their feet to the fire on the things we do.
That's agreed.
I just have, I have, and I've been very blunt with you on continued, and the only thing I can say is that for Jose and I, there's no new councilman orientation that builds us on everything that's came prior to us joining. One of the things I did is I tried to collect all the strategic plans. What was the most helpful, because I worked on the Hill, I worked in Congress. What happens is there's staff. We're volunteers. We got other stuff. So I went to the head of every committee that existed, the recreation committee, and I said, okay, I'm a new council, fill me in on what the committee's doing. I was going to do that, but the equity committee didn't exist anymore.
Because the plan was over. So when you act, no, tell me, I agree with you 100%.
So I didn't have anyone to tell me.
Correct. I agree with you 100%. But as you said, when you came into office, you didn't get a handbook on even how to do your elected job. So it's hard for us to have a playbook on how to police a plan when you don't have one from the existing government to even know what to do for your elected job. That's kind of unfair.
Well,
but I agree with what you said 100%.
There needs to be a little understanding of institutional knowledge and turnover, which is just a basic process of this. That just because we turn over and new faces are coming, it doesn't mean we're not interested. We just are saying it's not an insult to say we need to restart with a new person. It's actually a necessity. Your roots are the institutional knowledge. It's helping us to accomplish what we need to.
But we would like for you all, as Wanda just said, listen when we tell you all what we need and what we want to do. And we felt like during this process, it did not happen. Now, does that mean the town still didn't do everything they were supposed to do? I've said on record 3 straight council meetings now, Bill done everything. We don't want our progress stopped because you all are taking the power away from us to even celebrate ourselves. This is about moving forward. Everything we talked about today is past. I want to see more of a direction from our leaders about equity and diversity in our black communities, the third ward. There's a camera on that corner for what? It's a crime area. We feel like that area has been dismissed and forgotten about since you gentrified us from downtown in the late 70s, early 80s. We're saying it's been decades of proof to show that you don't care about our existence, and we're saying now, show us something. And putting a sign in the ground after 3 months of arguing with one person is not showing us anything, but you will give the power to the minority and not the masses. You all ran and got elected. Everyone didn't vote for you, but you still have to serve the people who didn't. We need to stop letting a handful of people stop stuff. 2 people can stop a playground at Walmart Park. 2 people can stop a historical signage. Y'all should do things for the masses and move us forward. Y'all know I hate coming in here and breaking up our lovely friendship because I got to not really smack the wrist, but make you all understand, when you voted for that, you told the black community we care. When you adopted Black Lives Matter, that's government speech. That means you care. That plan is going to hold you accountable whether you want to or not. So I suggest if you are not up to date to it, you learn the plan and let it work itself through the community leaders, because the plan was about community organizing. We took government out of our decision making and came to you when we need laws and procedures and policies. That's a community organization plan that has a bunch of community leaders and families working on it. You have no power anymore in telling the black community what we can and cannot do. We wanted to be as professional as possible and build trust, but when we get to a thing where you hear JMQueen, Reverend Brown, Karen Somerville, Wanda Boyer, all black leaders tell you something and you do the opposite, how should we feel?
You did the opposite on what issue?
On everything we're discussing about the city stand. Everyone
What
but
you made is that sign, and you've also told us, no, we're moving forward.
So, David, when you went upon yourself and talked to them, you did it based on what? Did you do it based on your vote and ruling that you voted for twice to install it? Did you do it based on what Monica Gray said install it? You did it on your own.
I did it because
you did it on your own.
Because this says unites.
You did it on your own.
I did.
So right there's a problem. You can't run rogue in the black community when the black community is telling you how to work with us. You just admitted on record for the last 3 meetings, it's what I want to do. David Foster, it's what I'm used to. And you're hearing us say, this is what we live, this is our perception, you should listen. And advisory committee role, that's the first mistake you all are making. You're taking it personal. This is to the entire governing body, not individuals, personally.
John, let me ask a question.
Yes, sir.
How many of the people on the Equity Advisory Committee wanted to continue?
It's a good question. I think we'll split down a minute. Did you want to continue, Tom? Reverend Brown, did you want to continue?
I didn't hear Tom.
He said yes. Vic, did you want to continue?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. I abstain.
I wanted it to continue.
But the people who were on the committee, I believe that Liz Shogay did not want to continue.
Correct.
Okay. I believe at one time you told me you didn't want to continue.
I gave you a whole free plan to work and you're not working it. That has a value to it that I said, I'm a community leader in our time. This is for free. Let's work it and get some of this stuff done and get some of the ugliness of debating race out the way. I already done my part. You want me to still sit on council meetings every week and bring it to you and have you all ignore me? No, I already did my part to keep you accountable. You're listening to me now because that plan is sitting in your face and you can't walk away from it. This is not a beat the town up thing, but this is enough of you all controlling our community. Period. I abstain and refrain from any more talking. The sign is in the ground. We just hope when we come back for other things that it's not this complicated. And I agree with Bill. He said it from the beginning. This is something that was an easy fix, and I couldn't see us getting here. But if that one person can put us here, that means our elected officials aren't strong enough in our community. If one person who don't have a voice in our community can stop you, you're not listening to us. One person stopped you.
How long did it stop that one person? Stop me?
From January 14th to now.
John, you postponed till Juneteenth.
We're not talking about that.
We're not talking about the past.
No, it's COVID. We already addressed that. Karen Somerville addressed that in her comments. COVID was the reason we couldn't put it in.
Okay. John, I'm not sure what else I can do. I acknowledge.
Well, I advise the town on the 3 things, and that's where I'll leave it. If you all want to do it, reach out. We can talk to the council meetings or how we move forward. But I hope ultimately y'all listen to the black leaders of the community.
Three things.
The sign is already, yes.
To fund the next two signs.
Yes.
Two more years at least. I would
Yes.
say 2 more years.
Well,
at
not
least.
two signs, not 2 years.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm going, 2 more years of equity advisory was the second thing you said.
4 years of supporting the Chestertown Unites Against Racism plan. The first one was put the sign in the ground with no alterations. The second one was 2 historical signs. Yes. And the third was supporting the Chestertown Unites Against Racism plan for the next 4 years. Because this plan, as you all stated, is in progress. So we had to give it time. We never really gave it time. And to be honest, the unfair part, which is not like that, when Chris resigned, it kind of threw a monkey wrench in everybody's plan. We have to always acknowledge that because that happened during this. But a proper closure and a proper way to move forward, I didn't want to be a part of it, but I see now that it's still needed. It's still needed.
I've got number 1, I've got number 3. Number 2 is,
Putting the sign in. Be the second.
Number 1 was a sign that's
But that's already done.
Already done. Number 2 was fund the next 2 signs.
Oh,
And number
okay.
3 was,
okay.
and really what I think we need to do is consider a permanent equity, not 2 more years or 4 more years. And this is a problem, I think, most of our things that we create are endless, like Recreation Commission. This was an advisory committee. Maybe it needs to be renamed. It's just a little bit of language.
No, it don't rename anything in that plan. The reason it stopped is because it was new shifts coming in for elections. That's why I stopped at that
But I
time.
think that it should be more infinite than finite.
I agree, but no disrespect, Bill. This is sometimes you say all the right stuff here when we talk. But this is something the elected officials should be doing, not you.
Here's why I say it, and because I present it to them. I'm the one with the typist and all that. So if I know what they
There's nothing wrong with the plan. It doesn't need to be changed. It just needs to be supported by elected officials.
From a technical point of view, it needs a new resolution because the other one expired.
No, which one expired?
The
Do
resolution.
you know the 03-200 was paraphrasing in the lights of accepting Black Lives Matter, basically saying, hey, we believe Black Lives Matter, because Tyler gave you 5 things to do. You haven't done any of those. I couldn't pull it up. We'd have pointed through all of them. And then the 05-2020 made that plain in legislation, but then made the Equity Advisory Committee the governing body for the 16-month plan.
That's what I'm specifically talking about, that equity advisory committee.
Something like that, just a
You
permanent.
misunderstood.
I mean, you know, at various times through the conversation, you're saying to us we should listen to the community, and we shouldn't act. But then you're saying at other times we should act and work with the
We're not gonna do that fake campaign here, Tom. Let me clear it up. When you say, here's a plan that we support, and I say, hey, it's a pillar for historical signage. Some community member came here and graciously gave us the initiatives that she's doing to work with this. Hey, what's the process we should go through? Hey, you should support this. Hey, you should support this. Hey, you should support it. And it goes in the ground this morning. That has nothing to do with you all supporting a plan. It's perception that you all didn't want it, and some people think the only reason you've done it because you for rally and you didn't know how to handle it because on public record you all can't handle race debate very well. You know, I mean, we always talk privately after this too, John. But that's just me saying JMQueen how I feel about
I get
you know, and the early part is going over the plan. That's me wearing my equity advisory hat, but I'm telling you, the black community feels dismissed and not heard.
I get it. I guess where I'm coming at it from is I'm just trying to find a way to navigate, right? Because we have an opportunity.
Email the equity advisory committees and see who will commit to coming back to that and work the plan. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. You all 3 said it's a tactical and strategical great plan. The plan is great, but it needs help. Just reinstate the equity advisory committee and let us continue doing the work that we all have been doing in your absence.
John, let me just say something.
Yes.
I'm new back to the community.
Because I'm done talking. You can handle it.
And I've been listening to what you said about the, I guess, what's the name? The advisory and it's under another umbrella. So I agree with Tom. It sounds like there should be not just the committee, but a committee that's put in place. Okay, Chestertown Unites Against Racism. The Equity Advisory Committee sounds like it's something that needs to be put in place as a permanent committee.
Correct, that's what Tom was saying.
I believe in diversity and inclusion in all communities. Yeah, so, as John recommended, my suggestion to the council and the mayor is to reinstate this as an advisory committee, open it up to any new members that may have just come back to the community and see where it goes from there, because going back and forth between this board and you is not going to get anything done. Right?
Well, let me say this though, to the Chestertown Unites Against Racism, that has the Equity Advisory Committee built into it. And then what it was is council members will put 2 members from their respective wards to be involved. So that process doesn't have to be recreated. They all pick who they want. So if they say we want to reconvene this, I would email all the committee members and see who wants to stay on. If someone does not, then you would give those extra bodies to someone, let's say Tom, pick somebody from your ward, Tom, that you think fit this initiative or want to serve. And then you would do it with each council member until they have the full 10 governing body again. So it's, once again, it's already in place. That's my complaint. These things are in place, but they're not being practiced by the town.
Right, but it doesn't sound like they can be, well, it doesn't sound like anything can move forward or be practiced until this committee is put back in place. I don't know what ward I'm in, but I would volunteer to be on the committee. All right. No, I'm not. I'm the coordinator.
You're in no ward.
But you don't have to be within Chestertown limits to serve. You just have to be in King County. You do not have to be a Chestertown resident.
Okay.
Wanda.
If it is reinstated, I don't think it should be for a 4-year term. I think it should be a set term, then reevaluated, then move forward throughout the duration.
You're talking about the individual or about the committee?
I'm talking about, yeah.
And that was supposed to be the ending goal, but I think when Chris resigned, I think that threw it off. It was supposed to be presented and evaluated at that time.
If there are words in it that say that, within the last 6 months of that, evaluation done for possible extensions.
Correct.
Words to that effect.
We never got to that because...
No, I mean in the subject.
I see what you're saying.
I'm agreeing with Wanda.
Yes, I agree as well. But once again, Wanda, a lot of that's already in place. They're not following.
John, my recollection would be a little different than yours.
And
But, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And now, John, I have also tried to get into the equity committee and have done the process to get there. It was very much difficult to get a response. To get,
we can talk about this after.
you know, so you
that's
have to.
false. You email the equity. I have 3 members here that will support what I'm saying. You email the Equity Advisory Committee and say, hey, we would like to do whatever it is as it pertains to race in the community. The Equity Advisory Committee then, on our monthly meetings, discuss what it is, and then have you come on and discuss what you wanted to do. When we extended it to you all about the trainings, you were replied back to, because we had free training from the college, and you all wanted to charge $6,000, and the advisory committee voted to go.
I'm not talking about social, I'm talking about me.
If you didn't email the Equity Advisory Committee, you would not get an answer. Who were you emailing?
Whoever that was, when you would go down on your link, that's who I talked to.
That's false,
Me,
Wanda.
not Social Action Committee, I'm talking about me.
You never emailed the Equity Advisory Committee. I'm telling you, you haven't.
This was my experience.
Show me the email, Wanda. Show me the email.
I just also
I'm
want
just
to say
saying, let's make it a little more easier.
on the town website, every one of our councilman emails is there to be contacted at any moment. I think Ms. Graves has an excellent point, and I think a lot of this conversation could have been done very easily. Just said, you know, we just need to reinstate this committee, and I think that's an excellent motion that we're going to take. And again, a lot of the delay, as the mayor pointed out, has to do with something comes up. We can't discuss it because it has to be on the agenda 24 hours at a time. We have to wait 2 weeks before we can even get together again as a group to discuss something. So that is not a delay that by choice, that is mandated by the meeting rules, that we are not able to discuss anything until the subsequent meeting. So a clarification on involuntary delays is not meaning that. But I also get the fact that regardless of how long we've been here, the history of the town council, the history of the black community, any delay on our part is taken as a broken promise of some sort. Not because of
100% correct. You listened to what we said, yes.
Regardless of our current, which I know everybody in this table is engaged and is supportive of this, but we are also very conscious that we are also trying to make sure that we're aware of past things that had nothing to do with us, but we have to make sure anything that we're saying is just a delay. We understand the perception is that it is a broken promise. That is something that we have to be aware of, and we're working hard at that.
And that's
But it is
just
a
what we're
conversation is all we need to be having.
Yes.
And everyone is free to have this conversation or come up and have the podium is whoever would like to have it. You just ask and it's yours to speak.
I don't think we've got someone to demonstrate that.
I feel like, I started this. I think I probably better put something in. A long time ago, I had the idea for the sign down at the harbor. I went to Karen. Karen said, I know the guy that will help us. And we went to John and we became the Three Musketeers. However, I feel that the point that John has made is a very good point, and I think this has been a very good learning session for everybody. And I believe one of you had said we need to know how to navigate this. Well, one of my dear African American friends saw the video. She happens to live in New Jersey. That happened last 2 weeks ago. And she said, Cindy, bring it down to a human level. We're talking about united here. Bring it to a human level. What would have happened, for example, if I moved in to the house that's on the corner of Cannon and Queen, and somebody came in and said, Royal Tavern, we're going to put a sign there about Royal Tavern. Could have been Uptown Club. And I could have said, whoa, wait a minute, I don't want to have that in front of my house. I don't want to have a sign. That ruins my front yard look, but it ruins my drive-by look. Would you have said to them, okay, let me tell you what, this is not on your property, so it's not your problem. This is our problem. It's the city's property. And the majority of the people in the city wanted Royal Tavern sign to be put there. And I think this, sometimes when you get to race, remove the race for a minute. Take it to a human level. What would you have done if it was your brother or your sister or somebody who did this? And then you can sometimes understand a little bit more about what's going on in the community. Because, first of all, how many of you think that we actually have a white community? No, we don't have a white community. We're so divided. We have lots of little divisions. Well, okay, there's a black community. Some people like to think of it as a black community. You want to know how to navigate this stuff? Think of it as a human community. And listen to the majority of the human community, just like you would have listened to the majority of the human community when the Royal Tavern sign went up. And I assume the Royal Tavern might have been funded by the city. I don't know. It's been a long time. I imagine it was up there before you were born, Bill.
It's been up for a long time, mate.
Yeah.
It says right on it who funded it,
So anyway, I would like to end this by saying, think in terms of unity, think in terms of humanity. I think it would be great to continue advisory committees, and I hope that you do consider that. Because if not, I'm going to have a few problems sleeping. I handed the football to Karen over there, and she made all the touchdowns. And now I'm beginning to feel like Brady, that I'm somebody's saying to me, whoa, what did you do? So I really hope that you understand what amount of work Karen and John have done over the years, and that we'd like to continue. And thank you.
Cindy, thank you, and I really appreciate the work that's been done. As we're thinking about reinstating the committee, one thing I'd like us to keep in mind is that we've gotten kind of divided within this, and John was evidently waiting for me to call him to come in. I work with a lot of different committees, and every other one, John, will call me. Sometimes I call them, but communication really is a two-way street. No, John,
Just let it go.
I'll let you finish.
You did have yours.
Just let it go.
All I'm saying is in the next iteration, let's worry a little less about the boundaries and more about the humanness of our community that's struggling to unite. And if anybody senses a communication problem, call them. That's not that hard. Knock on their door. That's not that hard. One does not have to wait for an invitation in Chestertown to meet with somebody.
It depends on what you're in regards to. The historical signage was on town property, but to you, think about
Can we
communication.
leave that issue and go on, move forward, John?
I'm telling girls, we ready. I met him 10 years ago. You know the next time he called me? When Chris Sereno resigned. But he wanted communication. You know the next time I heard from him?
John, I
When
sat in
he
your
emailed
office
us today.
twice. Let's be careful.
And said, be nice to the social action committee. That's what you came to tell me. Exactly.